Making her Sons of Montezuma podcast debut, we are joined by Tiffany Hecklinski. Now, for those of our listeners who may not know who that is, offensive coordinator Jeff Hecklinski is serving his second time around here with the Aztecs here at San Diego State, and his lovely wife Tiffany is here to join us and to share a little bit about her story, her journey, and we couldn't be more proud to have you here, Tiffany. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. And thank you so much for having me on today. I really appreciate you. I know this is a little bit out of what you normally talk about. And so I really appreciate you helping me spread this really important message, and hopefully we can save some lives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So before we get into the big part of the story here, all the listeners want to know, because like we said, your husband, Jeff, is the offensive coordinator of the Aztecs. Now, give us a little bit of backstory. Now, how did you and Jeff meet each other?
Oh, he loves this story. He loves to tell this story. And if he tells it and if I tell it, like, I think his version is a little more entertaining. He likes to embellish it a little bit more, but essentially, my father was coaching at the University of Illinois. So not only am I a coach's wife, but I'm also a coach's daughter. And my father was the offensive line coach at the University of Illinois, and was recruiting the Chicagoland area, and was recruiting a quarterback out of Palatine High School in the northwest suburbs. And at the time, universities were allowed to have recruiting programs. So like they had students, and a lot of times it was girls, right? That when recruits came to campus, we showed them around. We took them on tours, that sort of thing. And I was attending the University of Illinois at the time, and was one of the volunteer Illini recruiters. And so my dad was having this recruit into campus, and I showed him and his dad around campus at the University of Illinois, and that was the first time we met. I drove him around campus in a golf cart.
Tiffany, if you could see your face right now, you are absolutely glowing.
Well, and he loves to tell this story, because he is going to absolutely love that you asked me that question, because he thinks this is the best thing. And I'm sure when you get a chance to ask him that question, he will give you much more detail than I do. But it was really sweet. And, we've been together a long time.
Well, I hope I get to ask him that question and get the other side of the story. It sounds almost storybookish. Very cool. Very cool. It's a little side note. One of our content creators, he writes some of our preview articles looking at the team ahead. He actually, I believe he went to the same high school a nearby high school of Jeff's. And he said, boy, Jeff was an excellent quarterback. He was really good.
He was coming out of high school. He was one of the top 3 in the country. So it was him, Ron Powless, who ended up going to Notre Dame. And then, oh my gosh, I forgot who the third one was. There was a third one, but Ron went to Notre Dame, Jeff went to Illinois. So it was kind of an exciting time, but yeah, he had offers literally from all over the country. So it was pretty cool.
Okay. All right. So tell us again, this is, like I said, it's both of your second time here in San Diego State in Southern California coaching. What does it mean to be back here in San Diego for you two?
Oh my gosh, we are just so grateful. I mean, this is just a dream come true for us to come back here. And we're so incredibly just grateful to again be working for Coach Hoke, first of all. He's just such, as good of a coach he is, he's a better man. And so I think, like I said, I'm a daughter of a coach. And so I've literally been in this my entire life. And what you realize is that that's not always common, that you work for such a good person. And, so I think that's obviously the most important thing is that we're working for Coach, and for Laura, his wife, because they're just amazing people, and they're a huge part of our story. They've known our children their whole lives. They were in the hospital when our youngest was born. So our kids don't know life without the Hochs. And then as far as just being at San Diego State in general, you're just grateful to be a part of a program and a university that is just such high caliber, not only athletics, but academics, and where you get young men that are just such wonderful people. And, we obviously get asked a lot about like what the kids are like and what the guys are like and that sort of thing. And I'm like, these are all guys that, you want your daughter to date. These are just great young men that are going on to do amazing things. And so, we're just, again, so happy to be back. And obviously the opportunity for Jeff to be the offensive coordinator and the quarterback coach is just a dream come true for him. So it's nice to see him come through the door smiling every day.
You have definitely lived a very different life being in a coach's household growing up, and now, with Jeff as your husband. So our resident coach, that we like to call him, he was a former Aztecs assistant back in the day.
Yeah.
We share stories, and he tells me about just being a graduate assistant at State and how demanding the time and the workload can be in that room. So I cannot imagine just the amount of hours and work and attention to detail and mindfulness it takes to really excel at this level that Jeff is, and the constant, support that is needed by yourself, the spouse, and all that hard work that is involved. When in your first years here at San Diego State, it was part of a major turnaround for us. It was the beginnings of a brand new football culture.
Yeah.
And a lot of that, is due to Hoke and Jeff and that whole entire staff. So I know there's been a lot of different stops in the journey, as it is with coaching. So tell us, because, you shared with us your story on how you two met, and your path brought you here to San Diego for that first stop. And, I'm sure everything was probably going very well, in Southern California, part of this wonderful turnaround here in San Diego State. And obviously you guys get to join Coach Hoke in Michigan.
Right.
And for what should have been something that was just an incredible opportunity, a momentous, Big Ten school. Tell us what happened next, very shortly after joining there in Ann Arbor.
Yeah, it actually started here that last year. And you were right. It was, that the first year here was rough, right? We were getting there and it was rough. But then that second year, Ronnie Hillman takes off and Ryan doing such a great job. And,
fake, wide open, Hillman in the end zone for a touchdown. Boy, did they do that beautifully. Brandon Sullivan goes over the top, holds it. Lindley just sits there calmly with the football until Hillman is open and it hits.
Won a bowl game in 41 years, right?
second year comes, and it was so exciting. And we were just, oh my gosh, it was just such a wonderful time, you know, and we were so excited for the people here in San Diego because you guys had waited so long for this and for these players that we knew had so much talent. And like I said before, we knew were just such amazing young men. And to have that year was just so wonderful for them. But in the middle of that year, I was really starting not to feel well. And, like you said, Jeff works a lot. He was gone a lot. The first time we were here, he was the running back coach. Andy was the recruiting coordinator as well as the assistant head coach. So he had a lot going on. And this was with the recruiting coordinator the first time. This was before like a lot of all the personnel stuff was going on. So literally their recruiting staff was pretty small, and the recruiting coordinator, you know what I mean? Like there wasn't like a director of player personnel and all of those sorts of things. And so recruiting was pretty intense, at that time. And so I started not to feel well, and it started off honestly with just a pain in my right side. And it, driving a lot, the joy of Southern California is the traffic, right? So, we have 3 children. Our daughter was a softball player at the time. I have 2 little boys. And I was just like, gosh, I'm just, and I was starting to feel tired more than usual. So I went into my primary care physician here in San Diego and said, hey, like, I don't feel well. I feel off. And she said, oh, you just have such a stressful life. I was teaching online. I was a full-time, I taught at Ball State still from where we were previously, and I taught and developed online classes for them. And so I was doing that. I was raising 3 children. I was the assistant coach on my son's Pop Warner football team, driving all over, in addition to this such an exciting time of football, right? Yeah. But sometimes, like when those exciting times happen, it's so stressful because you have to keep it going. Because like, oh my gosh, like we're on this roll and like we have to keep the roll going. So even though it's exciting, it's also super, super stressful. And so I went into my physician. She was like, it's just stress. Here's some Tums and away you go. And I was like, okay. And then it was getting worse, and it was getting worse, and it was getting worse. And, obviously and this is very common with moms, and with, but I think with men too, we don't want to admit when something's wrong, when something's sick, right? It's like, I can tough it out. Like I'm fine. I'd pop some Advil and, and to be honest, like sometimes the pain would go away. But then in January, like you said, we had the opportunity to go with coach to the University of Michigan. And that's when things really started to kick up pain wise. But I still went to emergency care. Like I would go in and say, something's wrong. I have pain. And what's really, really scary is that they would just give me pain medication and send me on my way and not really do anything about it. Isn't that scary?
Yeah, because even though you saw the signs, felt the signs, and did something about it, you had no idea what was going on. So it's just easy to kind of, okay, we'll take something to cover it up.
Absolutely. And I was 37 years old, perfectly healthy, right? And so I have no family history of, essentially anything. Yeah. And so why would they immediately go to colorectal cancer? Like, I didn't have like anything like blood in my stool, anything like that. I just had a pain in my side. My side hurt. Right. So I was like, maybe it's driving. Wow. Like maybe I'm driving too much. My right leg, I've pulled something. And then when we moved, I thought, oh, I've pulled a muscle, doing lifting boxes. Not that Jeff's not helpful.
Okay.
But it's he had other stuff to do. And so actually, when we got to the University of Michigan, I was still in pain. And so I started feeling pain in October of 2010, and I actually wasn't diagnosed until June of 2011.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
It's a long time. And so what happened is that I'd been feeling pain. I had gone to urgent care, and the pain was just getting pretty much unbearable. And so Jeff was at a football camp, And he got home about midnight at night. And I said, I'm going to drive myself to the emergency room. I can't deal with this anymore. Just go to bed. The kids are asleep. They're fine. And I'll be home before you leave for camp the next day. And drove myself to the emergency room. And they gave me some painkillers, which is like the best I had felt in like 5 months. And they did a CT scan and saw a mass on the right side of my, a mass on the right side, and said, something's not right. They put me in an ambulance and took me to the hospital. And 24 hours later, I was diagnosed with stage 3 colorectal cancer.
Wow. What a turn. What a turn of events.
It was pretty crazy, pretty unexpected. And again, I had no other sign except the pain in my right side. No other signs.
Really shows how important it is to listen to your body, to pay attention. And we all want to not be vulnerable, like you said. We want to tough it out. You just want to, get through it and not appear, as if we're weak, but we're all human,
Absolutely. And I think that is actually the most important thing. And the message that I really, really want to get across to all of your listeners is that, trust me, like getting a colonoscopy is like, I know it's not enjoyable. Like, I get it. Like, it's not like something that you're like, oh, that sounds fun. Like, I totally understand. But at the same time, like, it prevents this from happening. It prevents what's going on. And you do have to listen to your body. But at the same time, like, you can get one of these at 45 now. And if you have a family history, you can get it even younger. And if you do this, like, colon cancer is preventable, it's treatable, and it's curable. There are some cancers, like, you're screwed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Very rare cases. This is not a rare case. This is something, I believe you said 2030, it's going to be the number 1 form of cancer.
Yeah. So by 2030, and this is what's so scary, right? Is that by 2030, they're projecting that colorectal cancer is going to be the leading killer of all cancers in the age range of 20 to 49 years old. And so even though now, like, they've lowered the age to 45, like, that's amazing. That's great. But at the same time, that wouldn't have helped me. I was diagnosed at 37, right? So like you said, it's so important to listen to your body. So if you're having a pain in your side, if you have unexplained weight loss, like, which I know when you get to a certain age, you're like, yes, I'm losing weight, right? Like, it's, that's a good thing, we think. But sometimes that may not be a good thing, right? And so if you're having unexplained weight loss, and then everybody knows about the blood in the stool when you use the restroom. And again, I know this isn't polite dinner conversation. This isn't something fun to talk about. Like, it's not like you're going to talk about this like with your buddies, right? Like, I didn't talk about this with my friends, but at the same time, we have to talk about it, or even just listen to me, listen to what I'm saying, and talk to your healthcare provider and be like, hey, I'm worried about this. Is this something, like, can we get this on the radar here? Can we talk about this?
Well, the good thing about this podcast form is that you can listen to it anytime at your own leisure in your headphones. You can blast it out for all the neighborhood to hear, or like you said, just take the time to listen. It's never too early to get these screenings and these tests, so very important that you do that. So after you went and got the diagnosis, you took the steps, took it upon yourself to go and get the diagnosis, get the tests, all the screenings. What was the process like after finding out the diagnosis?
Yeah, I mean, it's hell. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, it's hell. Essentially what you're doing and what cancer treatment does is that it's killing you to save your life, to be blunt. So what my treatment was is after I had emergency surgery, and so my stomach is sliced, right, to take all that out. Then what they do is they give you a little bit of a break, And then I underwent radiation and continuous chemotherapy. So, and this is why I'm saying, like, get your colonoscopy because you don't want to deal with this.
Yeah.
It's not fun, right? So, you
if it's avoidable, then sure, why not?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I got a port put in where continuous chemotherapy is going into your body 24 hours a day for essentially all but like 2 hours a week. And then you get radiation every day. And that targets specifically where the tumor was. And then once that's completed and you go through, I went through, I think 32 treatments of that. And then once that was completed, I had a little bit of a break. And by that time, this is football season now, right? So now it's, and this is our first year at a new school. My children at the time were 8th grade. Our daughter was in 8th grade, and our boys were in 2nd grade and in kindergarten.
Wow.
And I was so sick. I was literally in bed 23 hours a day. I couldn't get out of bed. I was so sick. And so, here you were, we were at the University of Michigan, all these great things happening for my husband professionally. And I I'm in bed, I can't get out of bed. I'm so sick. I was able to go to the first game. I was told at one point in time, you look like death. I'm like, thanks. That's great. So thank you for that. Right? They're like, I can't believe you're here. You look like death. Thanks. Appreciate it.
That's one way of putting it.
Right. Exactly. But that's how bad it is. Right. And so, so then I underwent just chemotherapy after that. And that was for 6 months where you get treatment every other week for 6 months. And so during that time, again, it was football season. We were obviously with Coach Hoke. A lot of the coaches that were here with us were on that same staff. So I was very fortunate that I had an amazing support group of women, not just Laura Hoke, but, I had Mark Smith's wife, Kim, who is just one of my best friends. I had our strength coach, Aaron Wellman, his wife, Shelly, who is just an angel and a great cook. Thank God. So, we had these people that were there to help us. Daryl Funk's wife, who was our offensive line coach, he's at BYU now. His wife, we had these people that were so helpful and not just for me, but most importantly for my children, that I couldn't go to all the games. And so they were able to take Riley and Mikey and JR to make sure they were at these games. The first year we were there, they called it a game under the lights or something like that.
Yeah,
and we played Notre Dame.
The first evening game, I believe, there at the big house, right? At
the big house. Yeah. And I was so sick and I couldn't go. And my mom was at home with me because I couldn't be left alone. And so one of the other coaches' wives, I think it was Kim Smith, took our daughter to the game because I was just like, how does a coach's kid miss this? Right? Like how do they miss this type of game? And
to still have that experience as a kid and enjoy that and those memories. What a tough time.
Absolutely.
One of the best rivalries in all of college football. Notre Dame, Michigan. This one in the big house. This is the first ever night game in the big house. It's going to be something. Starts Smith in motion. He's going to throw for it. He's got to throw it to the end zone. Lobs it up. One-on-one. Cut. Michigan touchdown. I can't believe this. Rory Roundtree. Denard Robinson and some of the other players are going up into the student body here in Ann Arbor.
Absolutely. And I was so fortunate that Kim was able to take Riley. She was able to be a part of that win. We had this last second catch in the end zone to win the game. And it was so exciting. And my mom was, I'm like laying in bed and my mom's like, T, we won. She's like trying to like shake me awake, because like, you know, I was in and out, and Jeff was trying to call me and all this stuff. And I'm just like completely, and I'm like, who caught the pass? Like, who caught it? You know, and, you know, but it's just, that's the stuff that's so tough. And when you're trying to balance that football part of it, and, you know, when the spouse is sick, it's just, it's really tough. And so it's probably toughest on the kids, obviously.
That's another big reason why I'm very appreciative of you coming on, is because, you know, us as a fan base, it's very easy for the fans to just dwell on the wins and the losses. You know, I say that from experience, you know, because it's very easy to do that without fully comprehending they are people too. This is not a video game with, you know, players that just have ranked stamina and stats. You know, when you're dealing with people have real issues. They have real lives, and it's not always, you know, conducive to performing at your best sometimes. And, you know, so I'm really appreciative of you coming in and kind of, you know, taking us behind the scenes of what it means for a football family. I believe I was reading in the article, an awesome article done by mlive.com. You can read it yourselves, all the listeners. And I believe there was a section talking about the Sugar Bowl in late December. So this was in the middle of your chemo. And this really seemed like a pivotal point in the process of your chemotherapy. Can you shed a little light on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And so when you're undergoing chemotherapy, and again, this is going on through the entire football season. And so Jeff leaves, you know, like this morning, he left the house at 5:30 in the morning. And I mean, I don't know what time it is right now. It's after 5. I mean, he's not going to be home for a while still, right? And so, and this is off season.
It's
right?
it's spring camp, ball. So it's spring ball. There's a lot going on.
Spring ball. There is a lot going on. It's all fun, but you know, this is the season, right? And so, and it's obviously there's a lot going on, and so so getting ready to play in the Sugar Bowl, we're getting ready to, you know, play against Virginia Tech, and you know, play for a top 10 spot in the country. And chemotherapy, so what it does is it builds up in your system. And so you try to flush it out after every time. You drink lots of water and Gatorade and that sort of thing. But what had happened is that, obviously you've never met me in person, but I'm not really big. Like I'm like 5'2". I mean, you know what I mean? And so like, I was just getting really depleted. And it was when they were undergoing bowl practices. And what had happened is that I was in the hospital, and I had just gotten so dehydrated, and I was just so sick. And they had were essentially like, she can't leave. And my mom was there with me, and they took me to the emergency room, and they're like, you need to get her husband. I don't think we fully understand exactly what was going on and how bad I was. But she went to practice, and essentially like walked in, and Jeff tells the story that he's like, as soon as I saw my mother-in-law, I knew like something was bad. And like he left, like he literally like walked over to my mom and is like, what's going on? And you know, my mom was like, T's in the emergency room. Like she's just really, really sick. And Jeff went to coach and was like, Tiffany's in the emergency room. And coach is like, go. And, you know, here it is, you know, we're prepping for, you know, this huge game. Right. And, you know, he has to leave, and, you know, and coach allows him to go. And I think the thing is that like, not every coach would do that. Not every coach would do that. They'd be like, all right, well, practice is almost over and you can go as soon as it's over. Right.
Yeah.
And coach isn't like that. And he was like, no, you need to go right now. And so I think what you said before about what coaches go through at home, and, you know, unfortunately, this is not uncommon. There are coaches that have issues at home all the time, whether it's a spouse that's sick, whether it's a child that's sick. they're trying to balance this high stress profile career in addition to being a husband and being a dad and being to where they're needed to be, like where you would want to be, right? Like you would want to be with your spouse or you would want to be with your child. And so,
absolutely.
But he just happened to be prepping for the Sugar Bowl. And so he came to the emergency room, and I'm going to be real honest with you. The kids call it my fuzzy time. So like they'll be telling stories and I'm like, I don't remember that. And they're like, Mom, it was your fuzzy time. Like, cause it's, and it's sad because like that was our best year at Michigan, like on the field, it was our best year at Michigan. And I like pretty much have very few memories of it. Cause I was so sick and that's sad. But the good news is that Jeff has the memories and my kids have the memories. So that's okay.
Well, the best news is that you made it through, thankfully, and you're here to share the story. I mean, I can't imagine that feeling. There's not many. I could feel when you're telling the story. There's not many mother-in-laws that find their way to the football field during practice, and that means business.
Yeah, well, and my mom, obviously, she was a coach's wife. My dad was a longtime offensive line coach and scouted in the NFL. So Nancy knows her way around the football field. And we're very fortunate because she knows Coach and Coach knows her. And he would be, she knows that he was going to let Jeff go. She knows that.
Now that you've come full circle and you're here, one of the most important things is not just making it through, but you're paying it forward and you're doing what you can with your voice, with your energy, with your life, into sharing this cause, this message of going to get checked, especially this month, March being the designated month for colorectal cancer. So share with us a little bit on the lessons that you've learned going through this whole process and what's brought you to be so outspoken at this time.
Yeah. And it really is, and just being here and have it come full circle is just even so much more important because this is where it started. And so I think, kind of the irony of that is not lost on me at all. And I'm 10 years cancer free actually this month. Wow. And so it's a pretty big deal. I get chills even saying it because it feels like yesterday, but also feels like just a lifetime ago. Sometimes I'm like, God, that just feels like forever ago. But then, other times I'm like, oh my gosh, like that just happened. But I think, first of all, thank you for giving me this opportunity to allow me to pay it forward. And I think the reason why it's so important is that I'm alive. I went misdiagnosed for 9 months and I'm so fortunate that I was only stage 3. I'm so fortunate because there are so many people that I know and that I've met that went misdiagnosed and they're stage 4 and they're gone now. And, when something like that happens, when you're faced with your own mortality like that, you really, at least I felt the need to speak out because I'm here and I feel a responsibility to those who aren't here anymore. And that's what motivates me. And that's what drives me. There are a bunch of other mamas that were my age that aren't here or that are stage 4 and that they're continuing chemotherapy every day. And I'm cured. I mean, do I deal with side effects and that sort of thing? Yeah, of course. But I mean, I get to go to my kids' sporting events. I get to go to my husband's football games now. My life is pretty darn good. And can't I just do this a little bit for those who can't? And so that really is what motivates me to reach out to someone like you to say, hey, even though this is uncomfortable, we have to get this message out because lives are being lost and we have to do everything we can. I have a responsibility to make sure I do everything I can. I don't want anybody else to go through what I went through. I don't want anybody else's children to go through what my children went through. I don't want a spouse, whether it's a man or a woman, to go through what Jeff went through. And so I think that's really the most important, like that's my motivation is to make sure that no one else goes through this and also to do it for those who aren't here anymore. And I think the thing, what we talked about before is that because this is something that can be prevented and treated and cured, like we can do this, right? Like we can do this. And so that's something but sometimes people don't know.
Right.
And right.
That's a really great point because, it's one thing to try and have a goal that's really, it's not attainable, but this is really able to save lives. So tell me, do you actually have any testimonials of people that have told you, I've gone and they found something and I detected it early because of your words? Have you had that?
I do have, actually. Yeah.
Wow.
It's pretty powerful. It's been really interesting. I've done this now for a couple of years as far as being an advocate and that sort of thing. And I've had some people email me and say, like, I listened to you and now I'm going to get a colonoscopy. I've had people say they found polyps, they were precancerous, but they took them out. So that's how this works, is that if there's something inside of you, they can take it out. And guess what? You're not going to get cancer then.
Right.
So you don't have to go through all that stuff that we just talked about, right? Because they're going to get it out. And so that's what's so great about this. And hopefully, just even if it's one person, even if it's just one person that hears this and says, I probably should I haven't gotten one of those, right? And I should go do this. And that person goes and like they get a polyp taken out or something happens and they find out that like they get like, even if they have it, but it's stage 1, we help that person. We save that person. When you're a coach's wife, you're behind the scenes, right? You're the support system, and you're the support, right? Like it's not about you; it's about like the team, And so to do something like this is, hard and uncomfortable because like I'm putting myself out in something that I'm really not used to doing, and so. But when you hear that your message could save a life, it makes it all worth it. And so when I hear when somebody emails me back or somebody gives me a phone call, then that makes it worth it. Or even if I can help someone navigate this journey, because that's the other thing that I can help with too. And if somebody needs to reach out about that is, how do I navigate having cancer? How do I navigate having colorectal cancer? What do I do? Like, I have the list of strategies. I can help you. And so, that's the other thing too, is to just be able to get through it because it's tough, but you can get through it. You can get through it. And I'm proof of that. I'm proof of it.
So tell us, Tiffany, now that we know all of your story here, where are some places that someone can go to? Is it just their normal health provider? What if somebody doesn't, know exactly where to go?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great question. And I appreciate you letting me, give this information. So the first thing that they need to do is go to their primary care physician and say, know your family history, first of all. Know your family history. And I know it's not polite and I know it's not always easy to ask, but you totally need to ask and find out, does your mom, your dad, your grandmas, your grandpas, did anybody have polyps? Did anybody have a history of colon cancer? You wouldn't believe the number of people who get diagnosed and then somebody in their family says, oh yeah, your grandpa had colon cancer. Okay. We probably should know that going in, right? Yeah. Okay. But again, we keep it to ourselves. Right? We keep it to ourselves. So we need to know that family history, but then go see even if you don't know your family history, you go to your primary care physician, talk about your symptoms if you're having any. If you're not having any and you're 45 years of age or older, you can get a colonoscopy. Then your primary care physician will refer you to a specialist that will do the colonoscopy. And I promise you, they're not that bad. I promise. And Southern California people love a good cleanse. So everybody here should love it. There's no excuse. And then
the things that you pick up on traveling around the world coaching, very observant.
Right. And then, but if for some reason you still need more information as far as like, you're not sure where to go, the organization, it's a national organization that I'm on the board with, and it's called the Colorectal Cancer Alliance, and it's ccalliance.org. And there is tons of information, tons of resources for people on there that as far as like symptoms, where to go, treatment options, and that sort of thing. There's also support groups on there. I'm very active in those where people who are undergoing treatment, there are survivors that are there. And so we all help each other. We're a very tight-knit community. And so if it's something like you just want to go ask a question, it's completely anonymous. And you can join these Facebook groups, and then no one will ever have to know. And they can, say, yeah, you need to get into someone. And in these groups, there are people all over the country, all over the world. And so ccalliance.org is a great place to go, but your primary care physician.
This is a very important cause. This month is the month designated. I would feel terrible hosting this podcast episode, this special podcast episode, and having you share your story without listening and taking heed for myself. So for all the listeners out there, hold me to it. I'm going to go get checked for colorectal cancer this month, and I'll make sure to encourage as many people as possible through our podcast here to go do the same. So Tiffany, I appreciate you so much. Is there anything lastly that you want to send out and to all the listeners and Aztecs fans that may be listening?
Oh, I just thank you so much again. And thank you all for supporting us, for supporting the program. I follow you guys on Facebook. I think I told you that when, hopefully you can see all my little check marks and hearts that I make. And so we really appreciate the fans. And also please know how hard these coaches are working and how hard these players are working to give you the best team possible. And we're just very, very grateful to be here. And it's always a great day to be an Aztec.
Congratulations, you made it to the end of the show. We want to thank you for listening to this special Tiffany Hecklinski Sons of Montezuma podcast. As a token and gesture of our appreciation, right now you can go to sonsofmontezuma.com/shop and receive 15% off any of our products in our online store, minus our NIL apparel. All you got to do is at checkout, type in the promotional code Spring Sale. Up until April 22nd, when we start to clear out the old merchandise and start to bring in some new styles for our spring and summer collections. Once again, the promo code Spring Sale. We look forward to new episodes in the coming weeks. April is another big month with the NFL draft right around the corner and tons of prospective Aztecs to have their name called. So we're really excited and hope you'll join us along for the journey. This is Mateo San Diego signing off. sonsofmontezuma.com. Go Aztecs.